All right, people, we have some extra practice here. I know that some of you guys are struggling with graphing a line when it's in the y-intercept form. So we're going to do a couple of these and then start getting into inequalities and then move on from that into compound inequalities. So I'm going to try to get you the whole gamut here and just as kind of a refresher, and then also into the newer stuff that we're getting to in class. So to start with, I'm going to give you some notes here. I want to break down our equation, and we have y equals mx plus b, okay? And that's the form of the equation that we're going to be dealing with in graphing, okay? So when we see y equals mx plus b, m is our slope, and then b is our y-intercept, okay? Oops. So whenever you see m is next to x, so whatever is next to x is going to be our slope, and then whatever is in the b position, that's our y-intercept. That's where we're actually going to start. The other way you look at this is also, this is where you start, and this is how you move. Okay, so I know in a couple questions I ask you, what's our slope or what's our m, and that is 2 in this case. And then I also ask you what your y-intercept is before you graph. And in this case, you're looking at 5, so it's 0, 5. Okay, so that's that first part. Second part is graph the line. So you start off at positive 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then our slope is 2. And in this case, if we do a slope of 2, we're going to go up 2 and over 1, and we're off our graph. So we can also go negative 2 and negative 1. And so we still end up with a slope of up 2 over 1. And then we still have, and there's our line. Done. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward there. So if we go to the next one, let's do an inequality. Let's go to number 9. Okay. So same type of thing. Our slope in this case is negative 1 over 1. Even though there's no 1 there, there's still a negative 1 there. Even though there's no actual number, it's still hiding in between the negative and the x, and that's negative 1. And our y-intercept is 0, 1. And I'm getting 1 from this one right here. So we start off at 1. That's that one. And then we're going to go negative 1 over 1. Negative 1 over 1. Okay. And then we draw our line. And actually this one is dotted. Okay, and we know it's dotted because it does not have an equal to sign under it. And that goes on forever. Okay, and here's where it starts getting different. You've got to pick a test point to see if the test point is true, figure out which side to shade. Okay, and so we're going to pick 0, 0. And 0, 0 is really nice because it starts making things go away. And so we have negative 0. Plus 1 if we plug in x and y, so x and y. And then you have 0 is less than 1, and of course that is true. And so 0 is less than 1, making this true, so we're going to shade this side. Okay. All right, so we've graphed 2 lines at this point. One's just a regular line, one's an inequality, so you can see kind of the difference and similarities there. So let's get into graphing compound inequalities. Okay, so I want you to follow this. Graph, shade, graph, shade. Okay, if you do a graph, sometimes it gets a little confusing about, like, if you graph one line and then graph another and then try to figure out where to shade. Sometimes it gets confusing of like, where do you start shading? Now there's 4 spots that you could shade. So if we shade right after we graph, it makes things a little more straightforward. So we're gonna start off at positive 1, just like we did the other ones. Okay, and our y-intercept, and our slope is negative 1 over 2. So we're gonna go down 1 and then over 2. Okay. And this one has an equal to sign under it, so it's a straight line. Okay. We're going to pick our test point. So we've done graphing. Now we've got a shade, and we're going to shade with the point 0, 0. And so 0 is less than 1, And that I can just write it straight like that, because if I substitute 0 in for y, it's 0. And if I substitute 0 in for x, well, 0 times negative 1/2 is still 0. And that's gone, and I'm left with 1. So 0 is less than 1. That is true. So we are going to shade where it's true. Okay. All right, so that's true on the underside. And so we're done with that problem. We've done with that first one. We've graphed and we've shaded. So now we're going to come back and graph again. We're going to start off at -1 this time. And our slope is -3 over 2. So we're going to count down 3 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, and then over 2. So 1, 2. Okay, and we've got our negative slope there. And we can go up 3 spaces and over 2. And then we can graph our... And this one doesn't have an equal to sign under it, so it's dotted. And so I'm going to do this one in pink. Okay, so this guy's pink. And we're still going to pick our test point of 0, 0. And we want to know if 0, 0 is true. Okay, and so we have 0 is greater than -1. And is 0 greater than -1? That is false. Okay, so we're talking about this line right here. This is our pink line. Okay. Maybe it helps if I draw it in pink. Okay, there's our pink line, right? And we know that this point is false. So we have to shade on the opposite side of the pink line. And that is over here. And so our solutions are where they are both shaded. Okay, so any point in this double shaded area is going to work for both equations. If you grab something that's up here, it will only work for the pink equation. If you grab a point from in the yellow area, it will only work for the yellow inequality. And then if you grab something where it's not shaded at all, it's not going to work for either. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward on that one. Well, maybe it's not straightforward. I know that like some people really struggle with graphing and shading. So you're graphing and shading twice, and you're trying to graph things that are solutions. So we have time for one more example here. Let's do this one. It's kind of a funky example because it's got that y is greater than -1. So if you see a y or an x by itself, it's either going to be a line going straight up and down or straight side to side. So if you put a dot at -1 on the y-axis, this line is going through that dot, and it's at a dot. It's going through like this. Okay. And it says y is greater than -1. So if you say y is 0, here is 0, 0, then that one works. So we're going to be shading above the line in this case. Okay, so this is above the line. Okay. And then our second one, we have y is greater than x plus 1. So we have a starting point of +1. And then in front of that x, there is a 1 over 1. So we're going to go up 1 over 1. And this one's also dotted. Okay, so I'm going to grab my pink one. Okay, so there's my pink dotted line. And now we have to figure out which side to shade. Do we shade above that pink line, or do we shade below that pink line? And so we can pick 0, 0 as our test point. Okay, so 0, 0 is our new test point. And we're going to substitute 0 in here, and 0 for x. Well, 0 plus 1 is 1. So we have 0 is greater than 1. So 0, 0 is actually false, which means we've got to shade the other side of the line. So going this way. Okay, and so the only solutions in here are the solutions that are in both the shaded yellow highlighted area and the shaded pink highlighted area. Okay, so not here. So these are not solutions. It only works for the yellow. These are not solutions. It will only work for the pink. And these are not solutions because it will work for neither of them. Okay, so hopefully that gave you guys a little bit of help here. I'll be back in class next week, or on Friday. So I'll hopefully see you then. Good luck, guys.